Contenders, ready! Gladiators, ready! 3, 2, 1. The Gladiator!
Hello and welcome to the GladPod in association with Gladiators TV. I'm David Blackmore and joining me this week is just producer Paul. Unfortunately, there's no Di, aka Jet, this week, but we're keeping everything crossed that she's going to be able to join us for the next GladPod. We're not going to delve into our electronic post bag today because I'm sure you're far more interested in what Di says about your correspondence than Paul or I, but please do keep your messages coming in. You can slide into our DMs on Instagram, Facebook or Twitter, or you can email us at gladpod@gladiatorstv.com. This week's episode is an absolute cracker. Strap yourselves in. Let's get on with it, shall we?
3, 2, 1.
On this week's GladPod, get ready, strap yourself in. We are about to embark on a journey with a true legend of the Gladiators arena. Ladies and gentlemen, the undisputed Mr. Nice Guy, the one and only Ace. Warren, how you doing?
Awooga, Dave. It's great to be here. Mr. Nice Guy. Well, that's not true.
And guarding those baskets is the mighty Warrior, Hunter, and Ace.
And a first appearance for the 23-year-old Ace on the right of your screen. One of the sensational new signings this season. 16 stone and 6 foot tall. Can the Contenders cope with these heavyweight hitmen?
Fun fact, producer Paul was the very first fan to write to you. He even has the congratulations letter to prove it, don't you, Paul?
Do indeed, yeah. I was the very first fan. I don't know what that says about me. Quick off the mark, but yeah.
I just couldn't believe I had a fan. That's why I wrote back. I didn't get any more after that one, by the way. And I think the reason I was smiling all the time is I actually just couldn't believe I was there. It wasn't because I was a nice guy. People often say that to me now. You was the smiley one. I just didn't know what else to do. I was scared to death. Everyone else had clearly honed their ideas in the mirror. And, you know, a lot of people look sultry and moody and they knew their best sides and everything else. And I'm just up there grinning like a Cheshire cat, like a clown, just thinking, I don't know what's expected of me, but I'm really happy to be here.
Paul, weigh in on this then. Did you feel that he was a nice guy?
Yeah, I thought that was your persona within the Gladiators. I always thought, like you say, in all of the press shots and stuff, you were always the guy who was smiling, compared to Wolf anyway.
Well, I think that's a great thing about GladPod, isn't it? Because we're going to learn a whole lot more today that we didn't know before, because I certainly wasn't a nice guy.
Let's go back to even before Gladiators was even on your radar. You were a skateboarding fan. That was your passion as a child, right?
No, I told a lot of white lies to get into that show, Gladiators, and I just started racking my brains because I was thinking maybe there was a game that involved something that was similar to a skateboard where I thought it'd help me if I said I was into skateboarding. Because I remember telling John Anderson that I was a rugby player. I'd never played it in my life, and he was like, is that league or union? I didn't know the difference. I think I just said union or something. He tapped me on the shoulder and said, that's great, we're going to get on fine. And I thought, I've just dug a hole for myself. Well, lies have a way of finding you out.
And they do on the GladPod then, don't they? Because 30 plus years later, we asked the question, we unpick that CV. So did you dream of becoming a policeman when you were younger?
No. No, I'm kidding now, Dave. I did. I thought my dad was a roofer and it was hard graft. He worked really hard and we never really had any money because there's 5 of us, family of 7. And I like the idea of, bringing justice into broken places. I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks.
And was it Arnold Schwarzenegger? Would you put him down as the moment, the sliding doors moment, the inspiration that kind of moved you from that journey that you were on to actually what eventually became Gladiators?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I grew up in a celebrity culture and I saw that people who were rich and famous had a fantastic life and people that were in the working class trap didn't really. It was just sort of you live for a wage, and it all seemed hand to mouth. Everyone seemed to be one paycheck away from the poorhouse, including our family. So I was like, well, you get one life, and I want to live it large. So, you know, I grew up in the 80s, 90s, and that was when Arnold Schwarzenegger ruled the airwaves. You know, he was the highest paid movie star in history. Chuck into that mix Sylvester Stallone, Sly. You know, he was a massive star then in Rambo and the Rocky films, taking on the world single-handedly. And as far as I could see, you know, these guys had big muscles, but, you you know, not particularly great acting chops. I thought they'd been to RADA, I can see that much. So I just thought, if I go to the gym and pump iron, I could perhaps have a lifestyle like theirs. So that was set in motion.
And that's what you did then, you left school. I don't know, how old were you then, 16, 17?
So as soon as I could get out of school, I did. I didn't know this at the time, but I had ADHD, so I really struggled at school. I didn't know why that was, but academically, I knew that I wasn't going to do anything great. So it was to the gym for me. All my eggs went into that basket. And so I just started to train from a young age. And also, I had body dysmorphia looking back. I was bullied. I was quite a shy kid, very introverted. So lifting them weights started to give me self-confidence. And I started to think, actually, you know, life's starting to shine a bit. Before I was just like in a shell, and now I'm coming out of myself. So I really enjoyed going to the gym and starting to look more like Arne.
And then we fast forward to Gladiators coming onto our TV screens in 1992. And you were a fan of the show right when it started, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd come in from clubs or the pubs, you know, I was at that sort of age where we were all going out, and it was on, the American one was on the TV at the time. I'd watch that and think, wow, that's a great show. So when the British one came on, I was like, now that is a stepping stone. That's a way to use your physique to start earning some money, because it's all right going to the gym all day, but my dad had a great saying, which was anything that consumes without producing will fail. So I was consuming all this food and using all my time to build muscles, but I wasn't producing anything. So I thought, well, if I got on that show, I could start making money, and perhaps that would be my step to Hollywood, and I'd live happily ever after, rich and famous.
And I guess you're looking at the TV screen, seeing guys on there that have had a similar journey to you in the terms of, you know, consuming, and now they're producing. So they're, I guess, in some ways providing that inspiration to you to then make that your goal.
Yeah, and in the 90s, muscles ruled the world. They really did. Every guy wanted to be big and muscly, you know, so it's like, well, that's the show to get on. I don't think there was any other way, really, to catapult yourself, you know, into mainstream media. I think there was a show on called Man Oh Man, and one guy already had that, and he'd go on there and flex his muscles and bounce his moves about a bit. And I went on there once, actually, and pushed a few people into a pole. I mean, it was a strange old show, but there was no opportunity on that. So Gladiators was the obvious choice.
So how did it come about? Did they ask you? Did you approach them?
Well, use a GladPod first for you, Paul. You'll be pleased with this one. I've never told this before, you know, and I listened to GladPod and I love it. And people are telling their stories how they were discovered. You know, they're walking along, and someone says, you're a great looking person. We want you on our show. It's not what happened with me at all. I actually applied to be a contestant. I've never told anyone this. They threw me out. I was rubbish. You know, I played no team sports. I was rubbish at the bits and pieces they got us doing in some sports centre. I think it was in Waltham Abbey or something. Then they put me on a treadmill and told me to run, and I remember thinking I'm going a bit dizzy here, and I went into the toilets and threw up. And that's where the journey ended for me. But it just shows you, you know, people say there's a big difference between failure and defeat, and there was, because I didn't take that failure as an end. And they say that failure is opportunity in work clothes. So I was like, right, I'm going to come back, but I'm not going to mess about trying to be a contestant, because that looks harder to work than it is to be a gladiator. If you've got to be super, super fit. I mein, they were real super athletes, the contestants. I thought it's got to be easier to be a gladiator. So I wrote in again, like about a year later, I think it was, and just said, look, you know, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. I could bash all your gladiators up with one hand tied behind my back, and you need to give me a go. And they were like, yeah, well, come on then. In you come. And I went for another tryout, and that's where it all began. But yeah, I kept it very quiet that I didn't pass as a contestant. Obviously, that wouldn't set the right image either, would it? You know, they want these superheroes and these athletes, and then I come on and say, well, I couldn't make it as a contender, so I become a gladiator. Surely it's got to be the other way around.
I mean, it just shows that you've obviously gone away from that experience and, like you say, applied what you needed to then become a gladiator, because you went on to go to the tryout, like you said, and you went up against 60 other men at the fitness test, and there was only one male gladiator role for that new series, which you ended up getting hired for alongside Rio and Rebel for Wembley Live, which was kind of like the trial period for the gladiators before they made it onto the TV series. What was it like going into Wembley as a trial gladiator and meeting everyone for the first time?
It was incredible. Firstly, I didn't, again, you know, as much as I'm giving you revelation on the GladPod, you're giving me revelation. I didn't know I was a trial gladiator. If I'd known I was a trial gladiator, fear would have got the better of me, no doubt about it. And because I had no real athletic background, I think one of the key qualities of being a good athlete is learning to control fear. And I think if I'd have gone in there knowing I was on trial, I would have probably just shaken my way out of there. But I went in there quite confident. You know, when John Anderson came to me and said, you've got the gig, I couldn't believe it. You know, I felt like I'd died and gone to heaven. And then when I went to I went on the tube actually up to Wembley, and there was, on the tube with the adverts for the Gladiators live, and I'm thinking, wow, this is all being advertised here. These are superstars, Wolf and Jet and stuff, and now I'm going to be in the show, and I'm just sat on a tube rumbling towards the arena. I couldn't believe it, and then when I got there and met them, they were just like elite athletes. They were like superheroes, and they were actually bigger and more intimidating in real life than I'd seen them on the telly, and the women were more beautiful than I imagined they would be, and so I was just in awe. I was completely starstruck with it all. But I mean, straight away there was a lot of camaraderie, a lot of help. They recognized that you're starting as a rookie, and they know what that's like. And then of course there's so much asked of you in that moment. We're going to introduce you now as a superhero. I wasn't prepared for that at all. People were back flipping and front flipping and side flipping, and the best thing I could come up with was a forward roll. I mean, where'd you go with that?
I mean, you can't have been that bad, because they gave you the Gladiator name Ace, which, I mean, to be honest, is pretty amazing to be called that in the first place. But before you landed on Ace, these names were allegedly in the Gladiators newspaper, which I refer to quite a lot because that was the source of a lot of this information. In there was some names that were apparently on the list for you. There was Iceman, Rebel, which obviously was given to Jennifer Stout later on, Jackal, Rogue, and Ace was one of them. So, yeah, what did you think of that selection?
That says it all, didn't it? Rogue would have definitely, you were talking about nice guy, Rogue would have definitely been more fitting. I'm just like some hobbit from Harlow, ducking and diving. Then I find myself on this, the first reality TV show, the biggest Saturday night TV show. I think Rogue would have definitely been more fitting. But I've got to say, the producers, Ken and Nigel, they were really keen on the name Ace. And when I first heard it, I wasn't. I was a bit ambivalent, to be honest, because I've got a cousin called Acer, and I called him Ace for short. So I thought, well, it's not that weird. At least, I'm going to get known for this name. At least it's not like someone shouting down the street, hey, Trojan or something. I'm not saying that's a bad name, but it's just odd, isn't it? To be called, to be known for it, like as that for the rest of your life. You've got to think about these. But I didn't like the name Ace at all, actually. And incidentally, now I've got to share this with you, because I thought, all them years, I thought, this is just me. So before I came on here, right, tonight, I quickly went online, and I know you get a lot of trolling online and these things. Just started doing a little bit digging around about Gladiators, and of course I put in Ace. I got up the definitive ranking of Gladiators from worst to best, and it's from a guy called Kyle Picknell, and it's like a media thing called Joe. I'm not sure what that is. At number 17, right? Listen to this. It did make me laugh. So it says, it's difficult to really fault any Gladiator. By the way, I come in as the worst Gladiator, right? So you are interviewing the worst Gladiator, right? So it says, it's difficult to really fault any Gladiator. Each was appealing in their own way. But the problem with Ace was that fundamentally he looked like this. You didn't watch Gladiators to see the perfect genetic offspring of the inside of an uncooked sausage, an NSYNC backup dancer, and an entire Middle England gospel choir amalgamated into a single representative cherub face. I don't know what that means, but I think there could be an element of truth in it, because then he says, not only that, but he had the most unimaginative Gladiator name going. It says, Ace. And then it says, it's difficult to argue that there was in fact a bad Gladiator, but Ace was the closest to it. Also, his real name was Warren. And then it says, Warren. Have you ever seen a man who looked more like a Warren in your entire life? You haven't. The answer is, no, you haven't. What a strange name. So my worries in the beginning weren't unfounded, because I remember thinking, when Fash shouts, next he'll be facing a Warrior or Rhino, it sounds impressive and scary. But then I thought, now he'll be facing Ace.
Last of our male contenders to sumo is Freddie. He's going to be facing the number one in the pack, is Ace.
The face of the Ace becoming more familiar to the fans now. Those impressive figures confirm his massive potential.
It hardly strikes fear into your contestant, does it? So I did think it lacked a bit of power, but there is a story behind the name, and there is a story behind the reason that I agreed to it finally.
I didn't know this at the time, but they were so keen on Ace due to a sponsorship deal with McVitie's for the chocolate biscuit bar called Ace. Although I did look at this up earlier on today, the tagline was the incredibly thick chocolate biscuit. So I feel like that would be incredibly harsh on you if that was. But what was the arrangement with McVitie's?
Well, firstly, they didn't tell me about the strapline. So if they said, Warren, they're bringing out a biscuit that's going to be known as incredibly thick, and you're from Essex and you can't even say the word Warren, it's probably not going to be a good combo, is it? But I had been warned by the other gladiators at Wembley. They'd said, listen, when you choose your gladiator name, because at that point they gave you they gave me a make-piece, two-piece suit. There was still a bit of leeway.
They were the trial costumes, that lovely number that you had.
Yes, you're making me nervous again with that word trial, Paul. So here I'm in the trial costume, they're trialing names. So I remember at the time saying, look, I really don't like the name Ace to the other glads. And they were giving me advice and they were saying to me, look, you're not just once you become famous, you're VIP, a very important person. But you're more than that in that you're a CIP, a commercially important person. That means you will get sponsorships. We all get sponsorships for different things. So choose your name wisely. And I remember at the time, Trojan giving me some advice and me saying to him, look, I really admire you because not only have you been like action man here as a gladiator, but you've taken that stepping stone. You're in Hollywood, you're the face of action man, and you've got a great gladiator name. I said, no, Warren, if I could have that time again, I wouldn't have been called Trojan. And I was like, but that's great. The mighty wooden horse of Trojan, that's a powerful name. He says, yeah, but if I'd have thought long term, he says, in England, Trojan might seem a good name, but in America, Trojan is a condom warrant. And so I thought to myself, I could see, so in America, he's named after a condom. So I could see why that could potentially be a problem. So when they mentioned Ace, they didn't tell me about the incredibly thick strapline, because if they'd have said that, I would have said, no, I want to stay away from being called that, especially where I'm from, So I've got 4 brothers, you don't get away with it lightly. So, but when they mentioned thousands of pounds worth of advertising that you'll get straight away, I was like, yeah, I love that name, Ace. Kenny, let's just go with Ace. But in the long run, it stuck, and it sounds like a nice name, then it went with the nice smiley image, I suppose. But our friend Joe didn't like it, did he?
And you were even given boxes to give away, right? And is this right? There was even a competition to win a date with Ace, which just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, I mean, I was sent boxes of them, which is ironic, isn't it? Because we're supposed to be eating healthy, and here I am now promoting sugar and palm oil, essentially. And I mean, what they did make that biscuit it was supposed to supersede the club biscuit, but it never did. So I think they couldn't get shot of them. So they just sending all their boxes to me. I was flooding Harlow with it at the time.
I still can't wrap my head around what the McVitie's sponsorship team were think, oh yeah, do you know what? We've got this new chocolate biscuit. Who we were going to link it up with? Oh yeah, one of the new Gladiators. I just don't understand what they were thinking. Chocolate biscuits and Gladiators.
I think I get it, because if you think back, there was Del Monte Orange, there was breakfast cereals. Anything, sugary breakfast cereals, anything aimed at kids. You're a biscuit manufacturer and you've got a prime Saturday night TV show, all the kids are watching it, and you've got this new Gladiator. And actually, I performed quite well at Wembley Arena, and so McVitie's were quite excited and really wanted that sort of association, because they were like, he's got to be the best Gladiator. We can all hold up the Ace signs in the audience, which they did, which were all cut, by the way, because they were an obvious link to advertising. But I just thought they were going to be able to flog millions of these biscuits by that association. That they were lining me up with all sorts. I mean, I remember being in the House of Commons in my Lycra at one point. I don't know what I was doing in there. National Dunking Day. And then in the afternoon, I was, I used to look at these page 3 girls in the newspapers. Now all of a sudden, I was sat in a giant teacup in Leicester Square, full of foam, with Kathy Lloyd, I think it was, a page 3 girl, dunking her in a giant cup of tea. I don't know what was going on. It was crazy. I'm there in my Lycra, just thinking, what is going on here? This is just bizarre.
What did you make of your theme tune then?
I quite liked it, actually, because Tone Loc at the time was quite cool, wasn't he? And there was Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, so it was that theme tune. And so there was that association, and all the other Glads seemed to like the song when it was played. And it played quite well in the arenas and stuff. So I quite liked it. Ace is in the house, and it sort of stuck.
Is he all up in the ass?
I've got to say, Rio will tell you this, Janie, I was so worried about this. And she was talking the other day on your GladPod, I was listening to her about imposter syndrome. I'd never been in front of a crowd before, not in front of any sort of audience. Now all of a sudden, thousands of people in this music blaring, and, they've got these creative ideas for you, and you're part of this massive machine that's got so much creativity in it, but actually you're supposed to bring something to that. And I didn't understand that. I was just like, what am I supposed to do here? I was so out of my depth. Even listening to music, I didn't hear that before they sent me out there. It's like, right, next, it was quite interesting. They were like, the new leader of the pack, you know, standing out from the crowd. It's the ace. And then I could just do like music bumping. I didn't know what was going on. In the end, I was rescued by Donna Darby, Bradley Walsh's wife. And she said, the girls, the G-folks were crying with laughter at my run out. I mean, they thought it was a comedy. They thought I was actually like trying to be funny. I mean, I was giving it my best shot, thinking I don't want someone have to pull something out of the act, you know. But you're going out behind the likes of Cobra, who's doing backflips and spinning kicks and all that, and then it's like Ace, you know, you're doing this forward row. I think they pitied me. I think they, you know, Donna came over, she says, Warren, you know, what was that? And I'm like, I'm so embarrassed on it. I mean, what do? I can't pull a rabbit out of an hat. I'm not a magician. And she's like, well, why don't we just do a lift? And I'm like, how does that work? She was like, well, essentially, you just put your hand on my backside and lift me above your head. But I was like, even that was embarrassing. I'm like, I can't do that. I can't put my hand on your backside. She's like, listen, we do this all the time. It'll be fine. Bless her, she's such an athlete. And she, you know, she weighed nothing, like 7 stone. She's just so glamorous, jumped in the air, put her hands out by the sides like Tinkerbell. And my job was just to simply confidently pick her up and walk forward, you know, down the arena. And the amount of times I dropped her and I just couldn't even get that right. You know, even that was a bit of a comedy act. Bless her, she came to my rescue and saw me through that. I was able to do a lift and that really saved my baby.
Although, Warren, it could have been worse. You could have had steam by E17 like your friend Hunter James had.
You know, some of them tunes were just so good and they were chosen for you and you sort of come up with other ideas for yourself. I come up with a few and I changed it once and I regretted it actually. But I mean, when I'd hear Lightning come out to Simply the Best or Saracens, I'm the One and Only, these were the songs you needed because they said something and they almost established your persona and character and almost sowed that seed in the audience's mind that you are the one and only, that you are simply the best, you know. Whereas Aces in the House was a bit like, oh, is he? What for? To do a forward roll, do you know what I mean?
And so, talking about Hunter, who did you get on best with on the show? Rio, Hunter, anybody else?
I mean, it's really difficult to say. And I'm not just trying to be sickly nice here because there were just so many nice people with different qualities, you know, and it was a real unique experience in collective culture. But there was some people that were stand out, you know, and one of them for me was Mike Lewis Saracen. So there's just something about that guy. There was just an integrity about him that I hadn't seen before. You know, really, in that environment where there is competition and there is temptation, to see integrity and purity is quite a unique thing, you know. But I've got to say, everyone, I know that sounds a bit like a cop-out, but like Janie said, I was listening to Janie Rio's GladPod where she was saying we all got along so well. We did. And I think there was an extra bomb there because we joined at the same time. And Rio, Jennifer Stout. But we were in the presence of greatness all the time, you know. I remember Jennifer was like an Olympic runner, you know, and I'm like, I'm going to get found out soon, you know. When you see what they're eating and what they're doing for their training and what they've achieved and these sorts of things, like, wow, I really am in the presence of greatness here. And, you know, they're like, you got these superheroes around you, these like perfect people, these high achievers. It really was incredible, you know. Quite an honor, really, to be amongst that. But long term, I mean, real friends with James Crossley, Hunter. You know, he lives around the corner from me now. It's amazing, really. I'm 52 now. I've known him longer in my life than I hadn't known him, if you know what I mean. We still chat on the regular and get up to mischief together.
And Warren, just going back to your comment about being a superhero, like when you were a gladiator, what did you think of your costume? The Lycra Ace costume, was it what you kind of wanted it to be? Did you want it to look like that? Did you want the one piece or would you prefer the 2-piece? Yeah. What were your first thoughts when you first saw it?
That first one that I got when I was a trial gladiator, I didn't like that at all. This 2-piece thing was just horrible. It had no shape to it. It had like some weird big pad that went down the front of it as well. I don't know what that was all about, but you had to tuck this pad down and it sort of went between your legs and halfway.
It was probably from Rhino, the series before, when he was one.
He was, yeah. But it was just horrible. It just it looked like you borrowed your big brother's pajamas. You know what I mean? It just didn't seem right. You could tell it was like makeshift. But then when they actually made me a costume, the 1-piece, I really liked it actually. I thought it was, you know, there was a lot of people in that show that were talented and skilled and creative. So when it came out, it was a deck of cards. I thought, yeah, that's quite clear. It's Ace. It was nice. You know, the colour of it was nice. It was comfortable. It was good for the games. I had no qualms with it at all. And of course, when you wear a 1-piece as opposed to a 2-piece, it takes the pressure off of having to keep them abs sharp. So that was a relief as well, because I like to pint at the weekend. The last thing I wanted was to have a 6-pack. I was used to a 1-pack. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think many of the guys really like the 2-piece costumes, to be honest. And what was your memories of walking into the arena for the first time? I know that you've kind of discussed Wembley, but yeah, Birmingham with the proper like audiences and the TV crew and the cameras and everything. Like, how was that for you?
Again, I remember going in there, checking into the Hyatt. I hadn't stayed in 5-star glass hotels like the Hyatt Regency. And going in there and I'm thinking, why is there a guy on a piano blinking? All this was alien to me. I get up in this glass lift. It was like something like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. It takes me up to the 13th floor and this great big suite. I was just like blown away by it all. I was like, wow, how have I ended up here? This is incredible. And then going over, walking across to the arena and, by then, again, creative companies had built this incredible Gladiator arena, and I heard a bit of the music played, and that was phenomenal. I was like, whoa, this really feels like I would imagine it would in Roman times when you're coming out as a gladiator. And again, meeting the gladiators again there, everyone was training, they had the hang tough rig down and people were putting pads on and that. And again, I was just in awe of the people around me, what was going on. And there was so much to take in, Paul, that it was a bit like analysis paralysis. I was like a rabbit caught in the headlamps because it was like so many games to digest, so much hitting. I was just running on nervous energy. In fact, I remember I constantly sweated. I never stopped sweating. I was like leaking continually. It was really embarrassing. I remember we did a photo shoot, and like there was ones where we would have to cross our arms and lean against each other, and then I remember Saracen stood behind me going, Ace is leaking. It's leaking. Do you ever stop leaking? And I was like, they were going, stop, powder his head again. Sweat was coming from everywhere. And I was like, is this ever going to stop? But it just wouldn't. I was just running on nervous energy and just really not knowing how to, socially. I was really socially awkward as well. I was like in arrested development. I'd never been. I was always quite a bit of a loner. Now all of a sudden I'm plunged into all this. Just show business, all the air kissing. I thought that was strange, where you kiss one side in the air, then you kiss the other side. I was like, how do I do this? Just shaking someone's hand weirded me out. I'd never really done that. And so it was a completely different world. And I remember I'll share this little story with you. I thought, right, okay, that's what we do. If we meet somebody who's in show business of the opposite sex, we have to air kiss. And you don't actually touch cheeks. You go mwah one side, you go mwah the other. But don't hesitate between that, because everyone seems to go in for the second. Otherwise, you'll end up weirdly headbutting someone. So I sort of started getting used to this. And I remember going for lunch at the National Indoor Arena. And I met Nightshade for the first time. So there's a big table with all the gladiators eating around it. And I remember seeing her on the telly, and I remember she was quite scary on the telly. I've got to say, in real life, she was a bit scary as well. I don't know why. She was just really feisty. She stood up to say hello. I walked in, a couple of them were eating, and she sort of stood up, she said, hello, I'm Judy, and put her hand out to shake my hand. And as she went to sort of shake my hand, I thought, oh, this is where we air kiss. And I thought, that's a bit weird that she's trying to do that from the other side of a table where everyone's eating. So I leant across the table to try and go, sort of to give her an air kiss. And like someone's dinner went over, she just sort of pulled back like, what's this weirdo doing? And I was like pursing my lips going, mwah, mwah. She's like, what are you doing? And I was like, my face went red. In fact, I think that's about the point I started to leak, and didn't stop for like 3 years. I was like, my face was on fire. She's like, what are you doing? I said, I'm sorry, I was just trying to, I was like, this is so weird and awkward to navigate. But I was continually in situations like that, it was really, really awkward. I was just so self-conscious.
Well, I was going to say, you've been thrust into this whole new world, something that you had seen, something that you'd worked towards, and you're there. How did your life then change after becoming a gladiator?
The main one for me was the fact that I went from having literally nothing to everything. So it was proper rags to riches. I was living in the YWCA, the Young Women's Christian Association, which is equivalent to the YMCA, but there wasn't one of those in Harlow. So I was in the YWCA. And then, they sent a stretched limousine Mercedes to pick me up one day from the car park at the YWCA and took me to Heathrow Airport to the first class lounge with all the other gladiators and flew us first class to Mauritius to the gladiator training camp. I mean, can you imagine it? When you watch like Willy Wonka and he gets the golden ticket, he's like, Charlie, we've done it. I mean, it was like that. I was like, and I remember being at Heathrow Airport with the likes of Jet and Wolf and Hunter. And I remember just everyone sort of just mobbing us, and I was like, whoa. And they gave me this great tracksuit that was, do you remember the tracksuits, Paul? It said on it, the ultimate challenge down the leg. And these things were padded to make you look like more of a superhero. And we all had one of these on, and I was like, wow, I have made it. I have really made it. I literally, on a daily basis, I was pinching myself. Can you imagine when I got to Mauritius? Everything was free. You just signed into your room. You got beautiful women round. You're throwing themselves at you. I was like this beautiful paradise. But I've got to say, it wasn't long before the bubble burst. So remember me telling you about not being a nice guy and saying that Rogue would have been a better name for me than Ace. Like I said, I'd lied to John Anderson to get the gig, so there was definitely some roguish stuff going on, and I told him I was this rugby player. Anyways, I remember I got there, literally put my bags down, went down to the swimming pool, great big kidney-shaped swimming pool, ocean behind it. All the gladiators laid there, Ulrika laid there, producer, and John Anderson stood there with Nigel Lithgow, and they're cooking up these gladiator games we're going to be doing for the camera, to show the audience how we're training. And John Anderson looks across the pool and he sees me and he goes, "Ace man," and he's got a rugby ball in his hand and he throws it at me, right? And this thing comes at me like a bullet. I just see it go flying over the top of the pool, and I was like, I have to catch that ball. If I don't catch that ball, I'm in trouble here. Anyway, this ball came at me, and I tried to grab it, and it just, obviously he knew how to throw a rugby ball. Not only did I not know how to throw a rugby ball, I certainly didn't know how to catch one. So this thing just literally slipped straight through my hands, and like a clown, I tried to grab it. But then I made the mistake, as it bounced behind me, and this is a big no-no of a rugby ball, I then made the mistake of running after it, trying to catch it as it was bouncing. And I just looked like a headless chicken running around the swimming pool, with all these gladiators and laughing at me. And then I looked round, and John Anderson's face was like thunder, and so was Andrew Norgate's, actually, because they'd realised at that point I was no rugby player, and they thought they'd taken somebody, who was good at team sports. And so they had rumbled me, and, from that day on, there was always, again, another GladPod first year. I've never confessed this, but there was contention between me and John Anderson and Andrew Norgate, which was a problem because, they want people of integrity. They want athletes. These are trainers of athletes. And now you've got some guy in who's told you he's a rugby player, and you've rumbled him. But it's too late now, because I've got me Ace name. I'm in Mauritius, and I'm just going to have to make it up to him somehow. But from then on in, I've got to say, it was difficult for me.
And what about just dealing with the public from that point onwards? And I should add as well, you say about, Ace and the name, but one thing that we've picked up definitely from this series as well is the length of names when you're signing autographs. Like Lightning, she always wanted to have someone's name like Jet, because it would be so much easier. Surely just having to just do Ace would be much better than Trojan, even, for example,
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was really blessed with that, and I could spell it. That was the main thing, which was really helpful. I also, McVitie's had said to me, look, we want to print you a load of cards, because, again, they're still trying to punt their product. So they're like, we know that Gladiators give you the official cards, but we want to print you a load of cards. And do you mind if we do that? I said, no, absolutely. Can you print it? And I said to him, do us a favour, though. I said, print Ace on the bottom as well, but make it look like handwriting, because I'm getting fed up with signing it. And so I got all these pre-printed ones with Ace written on them, and I'll try and give them out, but the fans weren't having it. They were like, no, that's a cop-out. I mean, it's not hard work, Ace, is it, to just write Ace on a bit of paper? Come on, get over yourself and sign it. No, it was a blessing of a short name. There's no doubt about that. Nice and easy to sign. But yeah, it was life changing overnight, and everything changed. Once I was in show business, I had no idea it was a business. I mean, the clue's in the name, gents, isn't it? But I just thought, I thought it's time to live happily ever after. But as much as we earned good money on the show, we were handsomely rewarded for taking the risks that we took. It wasn't enough to be like a real celebrity, as in, go and lock yourself up in a gated community in Beverly Hills. So you're still having to walk down the road. You still just, still live on a council estate, and, I'd still had to go and get a pint of milk from the co-op and stuff. And people just followed you around everywhere. And it was great to begin with. I was like, this is great at last. I always wanted to fit. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted people around me. I wanted friends. And now tons of people wanted to be my friends. But it's strangely enough, I was acutely aware that it wasn't really me they wanted to be friends with. It was the association. It was Ace from Gladiators. And, they wanted to be affiliated with this superhero they were looking up to. And I knew I weren't a superhero. Do you know what I mean? So it was, and I was thinking, but what if that's not my real identity? What if that goes? And I knew it would. Everything's got a shelf life, especially in television. Then what am I left with? Will these people still be my friends? So actually, as much as it was exciting, I found it quite lonely as well. And I found it difficult to trust people, actually, because I was like, especially with romantic links. I'd get a girlfriend and think, I'd never really had girlfriends before that. I was too shy. And now all of a sudden they're queuing up, and I'm like, you weren't queuing up before I was on Gladiators, and now here you are. And so it's really difficult to trust. And so just negotiating relationships like that and understanding identity, and also I think show business for me was a real eye-opener in that, there was a lot going on in show business at that time that wasn't quite right. People showed this, I like to make the analogy of social media. You show this ideal person, but it's not the real. You're commercially this person that's essentially selling something, whether that's a TV show or a product, but it's not the real who you are. And there was a lot of celebrities around me who I could see have become affected and corrupted by that fame, and they weren't who they said they were. And I found that quite disappointing. And that's not me being judgmental, because I noticed it was actually almost the nature of the business, because I started to become corrupt. Just when everyone's telling you you're ace, you start believing it. I started to believe that I was better than other people. I started to believe that I must be blessed, because if people are celebrating me and I'm bigger and stronger than them, I must be, there must be something special about me. And so, it just, I like to say to people on the outside, it looked like I had it all, but inside I was becoming spiritually bankrupt. I think another good saying there that's quite helpful is that worldly success has a way of taking you where your character can't sustain you. And if you have no real moral anchor, which I didn't at that point, I thought I was a good person, but it was like, oh, okay, well, if I'm going to get rewarded for telling newspapers stories, and the more salacious they are, the more money I'll get, then surely I'll just tell them anything. And as you could see, being a rogue, I had no problem with telling a fib to get my own way. And now I'm in this thinking, well, actually, this is a business. It's about money. I need to make as much money as I can before the show ends. So now I'm being rewarded in the newspapers. Back then it was News of the World and these magazines are saying, just tell us what you want. More salacious, the more we'll pay you. I'm just telling lies. And I'm being paid handsomely for telling lies. Couple that with the fact that I'm being paid a lot of money by crushing people and hitting them on the head with a big stick. You can see where this is going to lead in a young man's mind, can't you?
And talking about hitting people with a big stick, I'd just love to cover your events on Gladiators and your stats. So we've been pulling together some stats, and you have 63% win rate across 43 games. You had 27 wins. Your most played one-on-one games were Pendulum and The Wall.
The climb is on. Alex in blue has experienced the wall before, scored 5 against Saracen. Ellen still can't watch. Little wonder, because the Glads are released. Ace against Alex, and it couldn't be more easy for Ace. Atrocious climb from Alex.
And Alex, your climb was nothing short of a disaster.
Bolt. Well, it ain't over till the fat lady sings.
And I'm not singing yet, eh? Easy climb for you, because you didn't really get off the floor, did you?
No, I heard that he was a good climber, so I prepared my route and I was ready for it. But I didn't have to touch the wall.
Oh, well, never mind.
Tightrope, which was one of the games that came into Gladiators later on in the series. You played that 7 times and won that 6.
Ace, a tough, powerful exponent of tightrope skills. Dave, a fast food waiter from Exminster, but he won't be waiting tonight as he heaves his body to the top with what looks like a lead over the Ace man. Dave, trouble with the toggle, and that's nasty because it's let the Ace back into the race. Light the beacon, turn for the slide, but the Ace has hit the front, and he's going to hit the bottom first. Ace is flying home. Great feat from him. Blast Dave off the wire and into the netting. The end was quick and clinical. Ace really took advantage of Dave's slow changeover, rewarded him with a fireworks display and a quick trip to the net.
You were also undefeated on Hang Tough, Sumo Ball and Dogfight, although you did only play it once.
Crying with laughter as you're saying that. It's like, yeah, you got a win rate. I'm like 64%. I said, can't you fudge that? Look, that's terrible. And then when you said, oh, you're unbeaten on Dogfight and you only played it once.
Do you know what? Compared to other Gladiators, 63% is not actually too bad. What were your favourite and least favourite events on Gladiators?
My favourite was Dogfight. Funny enough, right? Visually, obviously, that didn't work. I don't know why, what was wrong with it. You'll know. I loved that game. So anything with height, I liked anyway. So whether it was Pendulum, I loved that, climbing over that ball, falling into the net. It's just a real scream. So Dogfight, I thought oh, look at that, a balloon going up, and then you get that great big stick and you can have a swing. And I remember Ken Warwick, I think they put a lot of money, time, effort, creativity into that game. He said, Ace, we need a result on this, And so there's this extra pressure on me, and I'm like, oh, and I think Rhino just gone up, and I don't think he did great on it. I don't know what happened. And then I followed him. I thought, this is great. Just like swinging this stick around, a load of smoke flew out. Then all of a sudden, people would cheer my name. I was like, now that was an easy day of work. Give me that airship any day of the week. It might have been a Zeppelin on the show. I tell you what, I could have done that all day long, every day.
The attack runs are underway. The clock starts on the first engagement. Neil under fire immediately. Ace, a relentless clubber. Strike one to Ace. Neil on borrowed time. His dad Joe offering tactical advice. Neil flying by the skin of his pants. Another hit and he's earthbound. Who'd fly on Gladiators Airways? It's the service you get. Oh, and Ace gets him. Big direct hit to the chest plate. Neil ejected from his airship.
But I've got to say, looking back, and this is not me making excuses, or it probably is actually, there were a lot of them games that were frankly quite dangerous. It's like anything, the bigger the risk, the bigger the payoff. And for that to be exciting television, there was a lot of risk with it. And I could see early on there was injuries. And injuries, great athletes that were in incredible shape were getting seriously hurt. And there was just something in me. I'd seen someone take a fall. I won't say too much about it, but Saracen went running and he said, I knew this would happen eventually. And I had a dream that night as well. It could be me. Anyway, I went on this game. It was the poleaxe. Here I go. Another GladPod exclusive boy. It was a poleaxe. I was told to dismount off it and I came off it backwards. And then when I hit the mat, my neck clicked. And I remember thinking, I fell awkwardly and I remember thinking, I broke my neck. I honestly thought I broke my neck. I thought I broke my neck. And I really feel like, looking back, that it was a warning to me. Look, this is a TV show. It is exciting, but don't kill yourself doing it. And so there were certain games where I would not give it my all, because I thought, if I give this my all, and sometimes that can be more dangerous, because if you're not fully committing to something, you can actually get more hurt. And so depending on what I was on, I was like, right, okay, what can happen here? I'd almost do a little risk assessment and method statement in my mind. What could happen here? What's the words of commandment? I want to win it. But in a way, it affected my performance negatively, because you could see that I'm overthinking things instead of going for it. When I look at the games that were, or the Gladiators that were doing really well, they literally threw their life at that. It's like, yes, I might get seriously injured, but it doesn't matter. This is what I live for. Whereas I was very much like, I've been told the show was given a lifespan of 3 years. I joined in like its 6th or 7th year and it ran for 10. So I knew it was going to end. And I was like, I do not want to come out of this with serious injury for obvious reasons. So looking back, I can see that I didn't give it my all on a lot of those events. Not the ones that could be particularly dangerous, where I knew that there was not really a lot of danger in, say the pendulum. I thought, what can go wrong here? You've got a whopping great net down there that you're landing like a cod being caught. You don't get hurt. It's easy. Whereas, coming off the back of that poleaxe or powerball, it's you can get hurt quite. And I did actually get quite hurt in playing. Every time I played powerball, I came off and I used to get terrible tendonitis, and it was agonizing. And the problem with that, although it doesn't sound like a severe injury, there's nothing really you could do to get rid of it. And with each game you played, it got worse, and it got increasingly worse till there's just a dull ache in your arms. Honestly, it was just agonizing. They'd inject them to try and get rid of this pain, but it just wouldn't go. And because I wasn't a team player, I didn't understand how to play that game properly either. And so I would just literally go out there and run around like John Anderson used to call me, a demented stag. And I just run around like crazy, man, doing anything to stop them putting a ball into that basket. And I'd come off, of course, inevitably. I wouldn't feel it in the game because of adrenaline, but I'd come off each game of that injured. And so it weren't long before I was like, okay, that might not be at height. I'm not going to break my neck, but I have to start being careful here because I'm getting injuries in other places.
And it was in one of your, I think one of the last performances on the last series where you were in the gauntlet against Mark Everett. And I don't know if you broke your nose, but there was a lot of blood coming from your nose. But yeah, that was quite a violent kind of way to end your Gladiators career.
Yeah, I mean, them boys did what they did. I joined Gladiators at a time as well where I think the concept of David and Goliath, I think people got bored of that. Big guy against little guy. So what they'd done is they tried to ramp up the competition. So they were using stronger athletes, rugby league players and stuff. I mean, I think my first duel was against Andy Farrell. This guy was bigger than me. And I'm like, and they were bringing in, I wasn't particularly big Gladiator. It's almost like they were trying to even out the competition to make it more of a challenge, if you know what I mean. Because just the inevitable, okay, you've got a geezer who's 10 stone heavier than a little bloke and he's got muscles. It's like, yeah, we've seen what happens here. So I just felt like the games were tough. They weren't particularly, they did seem, I didn't feel like I had a big advantage. But even with like coming into show, didn't really have a lot of practice on the games. It was like, okay, he's never been on duel before. I've never been on duel before. This could be anyone's game. I just didn't feel like I had an advantage. So these guys, the point I'm trying to make, these guys would do anything, you know, fingers in the eyes, kick you in the face, anything they got to do, because they're going to, you know, they stand to win a lot of money. They stand to win potential fame at the end of it, you know, become stuntmen, all of these things. There's a lot riding on it. So they're going to do anything to win. So, you know, and unfortunately for me, I'd get stuck in the middle of that gauntlet often with that stupid helmet camera on. I think it was just because I was the last one in, I was the rookie. It's like, right, put that stupid big camera on Acey's head because he don't realise none of us want to wear it. And then it'd stick me in the middle, and he just flew through that day, and I just felt like a hammer blow to the face. They laid me down after, and then I passed out. I wasn't knocked clean out. I passed out, and then I went to hospital.
First up to run the gauntlet, it's Mark. And tonight, he's facing Rhino, Wolf, Cobra, Ace, and Hunter.
Mark, another 10-point gauntleteer. Rhino putting up a better defensive barrier this time round. If push comes to shove, the Rhino usually wins. Mark up the wall and down again into the Wolf's lair. His helmet's off and the clock's automatically stopped for safety reasons.
There are 22 seconds remaining.
So Mark and Wolf clash again. Mark barges past the Wolfman. Cobra tries to flag him down, but Mark's not stopping. Ace with the pads. Can't clamp the leg. Hunter is the back marker. Fells his man. The clock ticking down. It's the big push for home. Can he cross that line? 10 points with 3 seconds to spare. It's like Wolf has been in the wars.
Hit me straight in the face with his elbows in the task. That's what it cleaned up.
And there's a bit of claret coming out of Ace's nose. See, they're only human. Mark just squeezed past Wolf, who smashed his nose against Mark's arm and then the wall. After Cobra, Ace steamed in and received a serious case of facial realignment.
And the sad thing about that is, if I remember, is it was the last show. And at the end of the last show, they literally let everybody that was there just take what they wanted. So they call it movie memorabilia now. I never got a chance to get any of that because I was knocked out in hospital. I came back to the Gladiator and it had been ripped bare like a chicken carcass. All my kit was gone. So everything was gone. And I remember going back and it was quite surreal, really. And I was like, oh, it's just typical. You know, I come back, I wanted to get all these bits and pieces. And I never really got any of it. I still got one of my costumes, I think, somewhere. But yeah, so I came back and it was quite surreal, really, because the show was over. It was done, no more, finished, and it was quite a surreal experience. But that was the tendonitis was the worst of the injuries, just for the constant pain and the hindrance it was. Because, you know, if you're a gladiator, you have to win 70% of your games. If you're not, you've got a chance of being sacked or just having your contract not renewed. So if you're not gladiating properly, there's a problem. So it's like, you know, if you can't use your arms, there's a serious problem.
And that's a great segue onto a topic that I kind of wanted to discuss with you, which was hit and run. I know that when we were kind of talking before this podcast, you mentioned a potentially exclusive but controversial incident that happened with hit and run. I wondered if you could just take us through that.
Right, this is a time of redemption for me. This is quite cathartic. I mean, these things have weighed me down for years. But I didn't understand really the gravity of what I was doing. Again, this goes back to integrity. This goes back to morality. This goes back to not understanding the weight of what was on my shoulders, you know. And it was really quite a difficult thing to watch on that show, because sometimes, as much as they tried to make it a real fair competition, there was a lot riding on that show. You know, if you think of Ken Warwick and Nigel Lithgow, this was their first, I think this was one of their first big productions, you know, and they're like the top in the world now, aren't they? So they're putting their whole lives and souls into this. So we were just a pawn in the game. We were being paid to knock those contestants off of their pedestals. And so if we couldn't do that, we may as well all pack up and go home, because that's the whole idea of the show. But just the injustice of when you'd have a contestant that would fall all the way through, his family's coming to watch him and that, then he'd get knocked out, injured in the game. And then he'd go out of the game and someone fresh would come in. It's like, that's just not fair. You know, and I'm like, how can that be? This guy's done all the hard work and now this guy just comes and picks up and takes all the cream and goes home and wins the car and the holiday, lives happily ever after. And mate here, who's been breaking his back for weeks, fighting Gladiator after the Gladiator, 3 battles every show, eliminated. Now he just gets sent home with nothing. Just broke me. And there was one guy in particular that I saw him in the green room and he was laid on his front. They're injecting it. And he'd done a game and twisted his back. And I went in there, his family were in there. He was crying. His kids were crying. It was horrific. I was like, what's the outcome here? They're like, we're gonna have to stop him. And he's like, no, you can't. I mean, he had a lion heart. He really did. And he was like, no. And I was like, so I started fighting for him. You know, we weren't supposed to. There was supposed to be a definite, you know, tension between Gladiator and contestant for obvious reasons. But I was like, I went back into the Gladiator pen and I was like, man, this is just wrong. The injustice of that. And they're like, what? I said, they're thinking they're taking him out. He's done all this, got to a final. They're thinking they're taking him out. And he's hurt his back. I said, if they inject him, he's only got one more game and then he can do the eliminator. And I said, then that game's hit and run. I said, he could do that. If they inject, he could do that game. I said, but I mean, if he just doesn't get any points, it's going to be so sad. Anyways, the seed was then sown in my mind. I was like, well, actually, we could even this out. Not realizing the gravity of that, you know. And also, I thought no one's really going to see it because it's hit and run. You know, hit and run was a game where, if you remember it, the contestants ran across the suspension bridge to and fro to score points. There was, I think, 4 or 6 gladiators, you know, 3 on each bridge. And all we had to do was throw a great big ball at the contestant as he ran, you know. And in a normal game, if you're on there as a gladiator, you want your ball to hit the contestant because you get all the glory, of course. Yes, Ace has knocked him off. What a great aim. You do your pose, your few minutes of TV. So I knew it was a big ask because what I was asking the other gladiators is, look, I can convince production to let him carry on. Let's let him get a few points so he's got half a chance in the eliminator. Otherwise, it's just tragically unfair. And so I sowed this seed and a few gladiators raised an eyebrow, but then they walked next door to see him and their heartstrings went as well. And they come back in and we sort of sat and hatched a plan. Okay, let's just throw that ball, make it look like we're trying to knock him off, but let him get a few points before we do. And I trusted the other gladiators and I said, look, boys, we've got to trust each other though. Don't just throw a ball at him for the glory of it and knock him off. Do you know? And everyone agreed to it. Anyway, literally the game started. He ran for a couple of minutes and he's scoring out of the park. He's running across. We're like on slow motion throwing. What's that missing him? I actually threw mine at the boom camera purposely to wrap it round it. It wrapped round the boom camera. I didn't even have a ball. And then someone else threw a ball and I'm looked there going, damn, I didn't mean to do that. You know, I mean, it was like pantomime.
We know that Ronnie's fast on his feet, and so do the Glad, but Ronnie caught them napping there for 2 points. Second run, clearly decided on a combination of judgment and speed. 2 more, third run, now this is going to be tight. Easily outruns the boulders, 6 points so far, back again. Even when the Glads are on target, he parries the balls away. 2 more. Ronnie's wearing this bridge out. Takes some shots, but they don't trouble him. Another 2, less than 10 seconds. Oh, smacked by Saracen and Floor, but they still can't stop him. 2 more points, last run. Can he get there before the end? Oh, he can by a whisker. Ronnie celebrates. Glad's generous with their applause.
You're dodging the balls pretty well.
Oh, yeah. Nothing seems to be going my way, but he's went my way that time. And about time I know. Thank you for all the fans in here.
It certainly did. Ronnie scored 14 points.
I'm getting it back together now. I'm a man.
But I didn't realise how terrible this looked on camera. But of course, the producer, Ken Warwick, and John Anderson, and also Andrew Norgate and a guy called Eugene, they saw it a mile off and they blew the whistle. And of course, they couldn't call it while it was being played because there's a lot of money riding on it. You know, the other guy's going to kick off. You know, you've now corrupted the whole thing. And this is quite... Although it's entertainment, it's a serious sports show with a lot riding on it. So Ken Warwick just come and he just went, you to all of us. He went, my office now. Well, I'll never forget, that was one of the longest walks of my life because I'm walking down there and I'm like, whoa, he is furious. And I remember like Norgate and that saying, well, that was terrible. I'm ashamed of all of you. We pay you to be gladiators anyway. We went in that office. And I tell you what, Ken Warwick, there was steam coming out of his ears. He was like, the amount of money in this show, and you think you can come in and just corrupt? I pay you to be gladiator. You think you can go out there and corrupt that? And we're like, well, the initial thing is, you know, people covered for me, bless him, but I was thinking I was the last in and the first out. And bless him, Khan was actually in after me, and he was one of the, I remember now, he was one of the gladiators up there, and I got on really well with him. And he knew that, you know, I'd had a year at this, I think, but this was his first year, and he knew we were all about to get the sack. So he's looking at me like raising his eyebrows, like, you've got to say something or we're all going to get the sack. And I'm sat there thinking, now this is a dilemma. If I don't own up to this, because then Ken Warwick just turned around to all of us in the room, he went, okay, whose idea was it? And I'm like, I'm definitely gone. I'm the worst gladiator anyway, right? As soon as I put my hand up, there's no doubt about it, he's going to say you're sacked. And I'd seen other gladiators sacked. They just never come back. And I'm like, this is me finished. And I was like, but in my mind, I'm thinking, but I did it for the right reasons. I thought I did. Do you know what I mean? It was a moral conundrum to me. So he's like, so tell me, whose idea was it? And now Khan's looking at me like, raising his eyebrows like, if you don't say something now, we're all going to get in a bullet. And I thought, if he asks again, and I sort of put my head down. And then he went, I'll ask one more time. And as he said one more time, I thought, I'm going to have to stand up or we're all going to get the sack. And he went, I'll ask one more time. And as he said one more time, he went, Saracen. And he looked straight at Saracen. He went, was it fixed? Now, I think, looking back, the reason he asked Saracen now is because, remember I said to Saracen had an integrity like none of us had. He would always give you the best advice. He was always caring about people. He didn't say anything, but he put his hand up and he just sort of shook his hand as if to say, yeah, there was some jiggery-pokery. But he didn't point at me. He didn't point at anyone. And I was like, as he did it, he just went, and then Kemp went even more mad. He was like, I effing knew it. And I thought, oh no, he's going to sack the lot of us again, right? So I knew it and blah, blah, blah. He starts going, steam coming out of his ears. And then I thought, I'm going to have to. And he went, and then he just went, Aulia, get out my office now. I don't want to see your face. If I ever see any more of that again, you're all sacked. And sent us out. And I remember as we went out, and it was, I put my arm around Saracen and said, thank you so much. He literally saved my bacon, put his own neck on the line for me. He did. But I remember Khan at the time was furious with me. It was like, you should have said that. You know, it's like, Khan, mate, I would have definitely got the sack. Yeah, but we were going to, I said, mate, look, it is what it is. But like I say, that's why when you say to me, who's your favourite gladiator, it was definitely, I mean, he literally put his neck on the line for me. And I see him do that a lot, actually. He did it for contestants. He did it when there was an injustice. And for that, I'll be forever grateful.
Well, yeah, and you mentioned Saracen. Obviously, you were tied with Saracen to run the Eliminator against Hunter in the Battle of the Giants. How did you male gladiators feel about going up against each other?
None of us like the idea of that because ultimately it's someone telling you to beat your mate up. You can't hold back in it. You know that, well, I'd learned the lesson that you're paid to gladiate. You can't go out there and say, okay, they're offering us 10 grand. Let's split it down. Let's all take a grand each and just have a bit of a laugh. Do you know what I mean? It's like, no, this has to, they need a TV show. There has to be a winner. There has to be a loser. And so none of us were comfortable about that. When they started giving us short straws to pull, and it was a bit grim. It went in. I don't think they even got a lot out of the interviews, to be honest, because they're like, how do you feel about it? And we're like, actually terrible. I don't really want to fight Rido or Hunter because these have been my friends and comrades for years. It was almost like we were turning on each other for cash. It was a bit grim, really. And I think also the exclusion of the girls, that just felt a bit weird. I know they didn't. That's not what they didn't mean to do. That I think they just wanted Battle of the Giants. I think they just wanted to be, male gladiators. But again, I think looking back, me making the final with Hunter, I really don't think it was on merits. I think it was on more miracles. I'm a man of God these days. He must have been with me then, giving me miracles, because I'm like, why am I running against a Hunter? I mean, Saracen was 100 times better than me as a gladiator. No two ways about it. I mean, he was the one and only. There wasn't an event that geezer didn't do well at. And even if you watch him in the games, so humble as well at the end of the game. Even if he lost, he'd get up and he'd just be like, man, and he did that on that when they said it's out of you and Saracen. I was like packing my stuff up. I'm like, well, I've got no chance here. And to be honest, again, this is going to sound like a terrible excuse, but in that show, I had split up with my girlfriend. I had this high-profile relationship at the time, and she had dumped me, and it was in the newspapers, and I didn't think I was that into her. But it's like anything, you split up, and if you've been in a sexual union with someone, a bit of your soul dies with that. Really, that's what was happening to me on that show. And I really weren't into it at the time. And so as I was playing the games, I was like there, but I wasn't really there. So I didn't think I'd have any chance. And so when they said, the final is between you and Hunter, I was like, how's that happened? How's that occurred? I don't even know how he got to that point. But I remember having a bit of a squeeze on Hang Tough. I remember being quite quick on it, thinking, that seems quite easy. And a few of the games. So I think it just ended up points. But I do think Saracen would have run a better race, to be honest. And I think that would have been fair. He'd been there from the beginning. He was definitely a more able athlete. And I think they would have probably got a better show.
In this Battle of the Giants, only 2 of our 6 gladiators can go through to the Eliminator, and the highest scoring gladiator at the end of all the events tonight is Hunter, so he goes through. But tonight we have a tie for second place between Ace and Saracen. The competition rules state that the highest scorer in the race events will go through, and in this case, it happens to be Ace. Ace is going to be running the Eliminator with Hunter. Saracen, I have to say, very well done tonight.
Ace is the man for the job, what can I tell you? He is going to win this. Believe, put your money on Ace.
You just want a cup of tea, don't you?
Yeah, indeed.
Okay.
Can we do half each?
Can you what?
Can we do half each?
What, a tag team?
Yeah.
No, you can't. Ace, you're going to be doing it on your own. I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, I'm not sure what the lead is. Obviously, Hunter's got a lead. But I'll just try my best and hope he falls off the seesaws.
Hoping for a bit of luck.
Hunter, you will go on my first whistle. Ace, you will go on my second whistle. 3, 2, 1.
6.5 seconds advantage. Hunter's slimmed down for this competition, but there's still plenty of bulk to heave and haul around this, the most famous obstacle course in the world. Ace is underway and under the beam. Finally, the trauma of the Travelator. Ace balanced and controlled. Hunter storms up the hill contraflow in 7 strides. Hunter is the ultimate gladiator. Can we have a comment? Thank you. Ace to the conveyor belt. No trouble. Fine effort.
Well, Ace, what can we say? It was probably the head start. Otherwise, it would have been much, much closer.
Oh no, I was praying he'd mess up on our seesaw, and he just didn't, did he? He just ran the whole thing faultless. And to be fair, he deserved that 100%. He performed so well on all the games tonight. And I'm just happy to get to the Eliminator and run it. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah, you certainly had to work for your money tonight. Let's hear it for Ace!
Talk about Gladiators ending. Did you feel it was the right time for it to end? Did you think it run its course?
Well, again, I think it's like anything in life. Everything has a shelf life. You, me, and everything has a sell-by date. I've definitely passed mine. Everything's got a use-by date, and everything has an expiry date. And TV's no different, is it? We get bored of things. We need new things. And if they had said that, it was meant to run for 3 years and it had ran for 10, then it was time. It was time to end, was it? And I think, looking back now, I'm told that was collective culture. I'm told it was the golden age of television, in that there were only a few channels, and only London Weekend Television were allowed to have product placements, so they had all the money so they could make the big productions. And of course, because it wasn't a digital age, everybody now can really produce something. You pick up a camera, you can make content, can't you? You couldn't then. So everybody watched. You could make something and everybody would watch it. And so I'm told that that's why you won't ever have that sort of huge production value again, because you can't really compete. So I think it probably ran its course. I think it was this. We were segueing into reality television as well. I think people wanted to see more, and there was little glimpses of that where people wanted to see how the gladiators were training. If you think now, they want to know more and more about people's personal lives in television. And I think really the risk factor, you can only insure things for so long, can't you? Every insurance company's got an appetite for risk. And when you've got people breaking their backs and their necks and their arms and whatever else, that you can't carry out, can you? That's not something that's sustainable. So I don't think it could have carried on, actually, and they were having to tame the games down because of the injuries. So I don't think we'll see anything like that again. But having said that, I've heard glowing reports about the new show coming out. I've seen pictures of it and I'm like, whoa, that looks bigger and better. And I'm like, hang on a minute, have they managed to do something here? But then I think, well, if it's BBC and they've got all the Wonga, haven't they? So I'm thinking maybe they've gone bigger and better. I've seen some of the Gladiators and I'm like, whoa, they look like proper superheroes, and the sport of bodybuilding and the sport of, and athletics and CrossFit, etc. It's all moved on and advanced in, all these years. And they did ring me up, actually. And they said, would you consider coming back, Warren, to the show? We know you were called Ace, but you could be called you're a man of God now. You're a gladiator for the gospel. You could be called Grace. You could have this divine power, the Holy Spirit, and you could pastorally care for all our gladiators. And I was like, yeah, I like the idea of that. I like this. You just better start thinking about getting into shape, and we're going to need you to run the Eliminator. But of course, all of that is a pack of lies. I've heard nothing from them.
And I know that we discussed it quite at length with Rio, the Springbok Challenge. I just wanted to just to get your take on it, really, because Gladiators end in the UK. You're part of the UK team that goes and competes in South Africa for this Springbok Challenge in 2000, arranged by Hunter and, of course, as we mentioned, producer Paul. So what were your experiences then of competing in the South African arena? I mean, how did it compare to the UK?
Oh, that was just such a blessing for me, Paul. Such a blessing. And I'll tell you why. Because the pressure was off. So, it wasn't this great big production at London Weekend Television anymore. We're going to another country. So there wasn't that pressure up. You could lose your job here. We know it was like Custer's last stand. No matter what happened, you were going to go over there. You were going to have some fun. You were going to get paid. You go over to South Africa as well, and you know it's going to be this great holiday. And so that was a real exciting time. And I think that's about the time I was able to stop leaking. I stopped sweating. The pressure was off. I'm like, I can go over there and compete and just enjoy it for what it is. So I wasn't ruled by fear. And also I started to really realize the value of the camaraderie and the British Gladiators. Actually, I thought that Hunter did a great job of planning it. I mean, Hunter is always ready. He used to have a nickname ready because he was always organised. So he loved all that, getting organised and getting us all ready to fight their Gladiators and psyching us up. I remember him telling us, fill the green room with beer bottles, he'd say, and empty them out for water, because obviously I don't want you having beer, but it will psychologically freak them out, gaslighting essentially. We were gaslighting in order to get the psychological edge. But I started to see as well that just the real value of production that we had in the UK. It was phenomenal, and it blew spots off the South African one. Even though it was good, we got to see the world, but also, still apartheid going on there, and yet, in Britain, there was we saw through colour. There was, whether your skin was black or white, that made no difference. And I think we were just ahead of our time, to go over there. I think that had a big impact on the South African Gladiators, because there was definitely some inequality going on there. So I think there were some profound things going on, so when I look back at Gladiators, I sort of get more of an understanding on why it was so important in collective culture, why it has a real nostalgic place in people's heart. I think it was really ahead of its time. And I think it's just changed so many lives for the better. I think it had a profound impact on a lot of people's lives.
Facing off for Whiplash, it's Charles! Here's up against Ace!
So, what sort of card does Ace have up his sleeve in this Whiplash game that so far has produced a victory for all the contenders?
Over to Cyril Mitchley.
3, 2, 1.
Ace drops to the podium and Charles looks for the exit. Brilliant defending by the British Gladiator. Oh, and Charles falls and Cyril Mitchley stops the game.
Ace, how is that one for you?
Well, it's a brilliant game. A lot more exciting than our version of Whiplash because it's elevated. Brilliant game. Loved every minute of it.
What was your experience like of being part of the Sky version?
It was lovely for me, David, because for me it felt a bit like another bite of the cherry. So I had kids by then. They were both young. And they'd heard about Gladiators, but never really, it hadn't been on TV and stuff. So they'd heard about what I'd done before. Now I was trained as a site manager. So I was just this bloke that went to a building site and come home in muddy boots of a day, usually with the because I have to shower people all day. And now I'm saying, I'm gonna go on TV and I'm gonna be a gladiator and I can take the kids with me. That was really exciting. But I've got to say, I think the hardest part of that for me was I'm like, what am I gonna have to do on it? And they're like, well, you'd have to play some games, maybe run the eliminator. I'm like, I can't run a bath these days, let alone the eliminator. I mean, I put a bit of weight on, put a bit of cake on being a side manager and stuff. And the missus is like, you're gonna have to get into shape. And I'm like, well, round is a shape, love. They're going to have to do me a one piece. But getting down there, I've got to say, and seeing all the old guys again and getting back into the competition was great fun. But I've got to say, I did know as soon as we took part that it wasn't going to be like the old show, because they'd actually reduced the show to a television studio. So it didn't have that big feel, that big arena live feel about it. The audiences weren't as stoked up. And also, they'd sort of almost lined us up for a fall a little bit. I think what had happened is they were hoping it was going to be bigger and better, and it hadn't been. I think they brought us back the second season, and they wanted their Gladiators to sort of beat us up, I think. And so even our costumes were just terrible. I remember Hunter coming out of his, and he looked like a strongman from the 1920s. I was crying with laughter. And I was like, you cannot go out wearing that. And he was getting really self-conscious. What's the matter? I said, mate, it don't look right. Do not put that on. And he wrapped himself up in bandages to cover up this hideous uniform that he had. Then they bought my one out, and it was just like covered in diamonds and that. And I'm like, what is this? And I look again, I look like some old 50 strong man. It was embarrassing to even put it on. And yet you looked at their Gladiators and they had like these superhuman sort of silver and dashing like cufflinks on. They just looked incredible. And like we looked terrible. And I'm like, I see what's going on here. This is a turkey show. And I knew straight away, because I went back quite heavy. I was about 18.5 stone, and they put me up against some lad who I called Lobster on the wall. And he was like 9 stone, soaking wet through. And I'm like, what chance am I? Double his weight. And I thought, this is a turkey show. They've just brought here to just really make fools of us.
Ace
Alex, it's great to see you back here. You became a gladiator back in '96.
Yeah.
You took part in 4 series, I believe.
Right, yeah.
So what's it like to be here again?
You know what? It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, at the end of the day, all we've got is memories, you know, and it's fantastic that I could come back. Here we go. All the old fans are still here as well.
Of course they are. Are you confident you can beat our guys? You're up against Tornado. He's quick as well.
Well, you know what? I've been looking at Tornado, and I've thought about a new gladiator name for him. I think we should call him Gladiator Lobster.
Why is that?
Because he walks around giving it all that.
But having said that, you know, I got to choose what games I wanted to play. I went against Dwayne Ladejo on quite a fun game where you press a button, you fly up to the ceiling and you have to grab a ball. And I managed to hide the control panel, and so I managed to get quite a few points on that. It was pretty good.
Here we go. It's Cobra who's up first, but he can't find a way past Oblivion. But Ace is straight in with 1 point on his first ball, straight over Predator's head. With no point after duel, it's just the start the legends were looking for. But Ace has squeezed one in, brilliant stuff. Now he's put 2 points on the board. There's another point for Ace. Brilliant work from the legend. And there goes the whistle, it's all over. Great stuff from Ace, but I'm sure Cobra disappointed. He just couldn't find a way past Oblivion.
Ace, you played a blinder. Do you enjoy that?
The best gladiator game there's ever been created. That was absolutely fantastic.
I was going to ask you about your experience. That was Rocket Ball, one of the new games that they invented for the Sky version. So yeah, it's great to hear your experiences of playing that one.
It was a really good game, and you could feign the hits. But what I actually did is I took him out of his line of sight. And I think if John Anderson was there, he would have probably disqualified me because, again, it was roguish. I was like... And you could see it really annoyed him. And he's a proper athlete. So afterwards, he was like, that was quite a... He said, Dwayne Ladejo, and he was like, that was quite a good technique, but I'm not sure it was quite fair. And I felt terrible, really. But I did what I had to do to win, you know. And then, again, it was quite glaringly obvious at the end of that show, because I remember the Eliminator had to go against Dwayne Ladejo on the handbike, and he was stood on one platform and I was on another, and we was waiting for because it was like a tag team. I was waiting for, I think, Trojan to come, and he was waiting for his Gladiator to go. And I thought, actually, it's time to level with him and be honest here, because I felt a bit guilty that I got a load of points against him on that Rocket Ball. And I said to him, I've got to say, Dwayne, he was like, what? I said, this is a bit I don't really like. I said, the fear. I said, it drains me down a bit. I said, does it drain you a bit? And he was like, no, Warren, I love it. I just love it. It's what fuels me. And it was sort of at that point. And I mean, of course, he went on that handbike and he thrashed me. It was like I was standing still. He was just gone. It's like dynamite. And I remember thinking, that's why he's an athlete and I'm not. He'd learned to control that fear. You know, there was an integrity about it. It was just, I was out of my league.
And just look at Predator. He's destroying the handbike. Have you ever seen anything like it? He's leaving the legends for dead. Wolfman finally starts his leg, but surely it's too late as Predator plows on towards the pyramid, hardly out of breath. He's an amazing athlete. Ace ready to start his leg of the course. Onto the handbike he goes, looking strong, but it seems the new breed of gladiators have this race in the bag.
Predator on that handbike, I think it was clocked 6.7 seconds on the handbike.
Not bad.
Not bad, that's amazing.
Not bad.
That's amazing.
But what I got to say, regardless of records or anything, that type of thing, you know, the fact that they gave up their time, we started from scratch, legends from the beginning, legends to the end.
And as well, I'll second that.
But again, I was just so grateful to be able to sort of experience, you know, competition with people who have reached the top of their game, you know, have given their whole, committed their lives to being the best that they can be. And you know, competition is a great thing. It brings out the best in humanity. You know, if it's done in the right spirit, you going against me going against you, in order to bring the best out in each other, shake each other's hands at the end of it and thank each other for doing that and being part of that. I think these shows are fantastic. I think where it goes out of whack is where it's like, I just need to be the best and I need to crush you. And my ego's here at stake here and I just need to win. That's when it all starts going AWOL.
Did you ever think that after Sky's version that there would be another reboot? Did you think it was ever going to come back?
No, I couldn't see that it would actually, because you just wouldn't think that the sort of show that BBC would pick up. So I don't know. I just thought, no, actually, it was golden age. It's done. And to be honest, sometimes I felt a little bit like I think sometimes we can hang on to the past, and sometimes, as much as I love it, when we've done a reunion as Gladiators, we've all noticed that sometimes afterwards there's almost like a delayed, almost traumatic effect where we'll get a little bit depressed. We're like, and we bring each other up. Did you feel a bit depressed asked afterwards. I'm like, yeah. So do you feel like you should have perhaps left the past where it was? And they're like, yeah. So was it a bit of an anticlimax? Well, it was nice to see each other, but it's almost like we're all a lot older now. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes you sort of need to leave something where it's at. So sometimes I feel like it's a strange thing, gents, because sometimes I feel like I want to hang on to the past, but then other times I'm like, I sort of need to let it go. But then as soon as I hear, oh, the BBC are doing it, I'm like, oh, I want to be a part of that. It sounds incredible. So it's a strange, I'm ambivalent about it all, really. You know, I have real mixed emotions with it. But, you know, essentially, I think it's great news that it's come back. And I think the reason it's great news it's come back is because I think a lot of reality TV has become toxic. And we've seen that, haven't we? We've seen the detrimental impact it can have on people when they're made famous for 5 minutes. It becomes a whole identity. And then it's ripped away from them brutally, and then they don't know where they're at. You know, we've seen all sorts of horrible things happening, even suicide and stuff. But I think the great thing about Gladiators is it's done as family entertainment, but, you know, and it's a family show. And that's what's great about Gladiators, because it brings families together. That's why people are nostalgic about the old show. You know, it reminds them of times sat with mum and dad, perhaps, on a Saturday night, all cheering the TV, you know. And so I think that competition brings out the best in people. And I think, you know, reality TV at that level is great, especially when it's promoting health and fitness. When young people are caught up in their bedrooms now playing computer games, and that's had a big social impact on young people. So I think to have superheroes out there, you know, that are saying, look after yourself, kids, and you could come on here and you could be a part of this, I think it gives them something to aspire to. So, you know, I'm excited about the show coming back. I think this is a very positive thing. And I think, you know, a lot of the producers would have learned from past mistakes. You know, I think this could be the start of something incredible.
If I had a button that I could press right now and I could transport you right back to the very start of your gladiatorial journey, would you press it? And would you do anything different?
Yes, absolutely. I do. It would all be done different. So I remember, like, you know, the likes of Wesley Two Scoops on there. And they're saying about that guy, we didn't know what it was, but he could jump over cars. You don't matter how big of a gladiator you were. We were all shaking our boots. That geezer was just half the size of everyone. But he was a man of God, if you remember. He was like, he'd be talking about the Holy Spirit. And at the time, I didn't understand where this power was coming from or how he was doing all these things, you know. But now I'm a man of God. And I say to people regularly, you know, they say, oh, gladiators. I say, look, I'm still a gladiator. I'm a gladiator for God. And the way we do that is we become Christians and we share the gospel. And I look back and I think, wow, I have an integrity now that I didn't have before, you know, that's not of my own, because it's God working through me. And I remember meeting John Anderson on This Morning, and he said, Warren, you seem like a different person. You were going that way. Now you're going that way. I said, that's repentance. I said, that because I've been born again and I'm now a Christian, John. He said, well, whatever it is, I'm not a religious man, he said, Warren. He said, but I really like it. And you keep going, son. And it's amazing how out of all them years there was a bit of tension and it just evaporated in that moment. So if I could press that buzzer and go back, I'd go back and I'd be a man of God with integrity, you know, shining light wherever I can shine light, bringing out the best in others, not crushing people, as that's what I was trying to do, crushing people so I could be the best, actually building people up, you know, just like Saracen was doing. You know, you're having that game, you're bringing out the best in people. So I have no regrets, don't get me wrong, but I just wish that I'd met Jesus a lot earlier, that's all.
There was one bit that you mentioned earlier on that I just want to loop back to, and it was when you said that, I think it was John Anderson called you Demented Ace, which has always been something that was in my mind because I always remember seeing photos of you in the Gladiators newspaper and all of the publications of you holding this clay model of yourself with like stag horns coming out of your head, and I had no idea why it said on it be demented, whereas I think it was Rio who made that for you, wasn't it?
She did, yeah. She knew somebody who was quite creative, and and I remember we'd share our woes, you know, we'd go out and we'd do a game and I'd come back and said, John Anderson just called me a demented stag, and I was broken, you know, I was like horrified. She fell about laughing. I mean, really tickled her. And so as I'd go out to parables, she'd be like, be demented, Ace. She'd go, be demented. Anyway, she had me this. I've still got it. I do still have it. Be demented, Ace. But again, you know, just going back on a spiritual thing, I was demented, you know, to go out there trying to just break people down for my own gain. There was a lot of demented things going on in my mind at that time.
Well, Ace, thank you so much for taking the time to go through all of your gladiator history with us. I would like to say just one thing before I go, and I normally keep this for the debrief that me and David do afterwards, but I feel like you've been quite hard on yourself as your time as a gladiator and how well you did. And as a fan of the show and watched all of the episodes and speaking on behalf of all of the other fans as well, you were actually a really good gladiator. You've given yourself a really hard time. So I just wanted to kind of get that one in there to just let you know.
I'm confident in my identity now. Having said that, though, you're so kind, so humble. A little tear is just popping out the corner of my eye. Thank you, my brother.
So there we have it. Ace, Warren Furman on the GladPod. Producer Paul, I always thought he was Mr. Nice Guy. I'm glad you said that at the end of that episode as well, because I felt like as much as we know that they enjoy listening to the outro to hear what we've said about them, it was nice for him to hear it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I just felt like he was being extra hard on himself. Like, I know that looking back on your time on Gladiators and like the person that he is now, but I just, when he was talking, I thought he was giving himself a really hard time about his Gladiator career and performance. And it was fascinating, like on the Rio episodes, to hear about how he wasn't confident and how he was coming into this team and he almost felt like an imposter and that he almost lied to get his way there. But I think he was kind of overlooking the fact that he passed the fitness tests. The producers were obviously happy with how he looked as a gladiator. And I know that he kind of like joked about his win rate, but that's actually pretty good. And his performances were quite exciting to watch. And being a gladiator, it isn't always about winning the games. It's about how exciting they are to watch. And for me as a fan, Ace made it exciting to watch.
I need you to post on social media the congratulations letter. What was it about Ace? Did you just write to all the gladiators when they signed up? Or
pretty much, yeah. As soon as I knew the person's name, I would literally just write a letter, send it off to London Weekend Television with a stamped addressed envelope, and then it was just literally potluck whether they came back. It's quite embarrassing looking back now, but also it's quite nice because, like, I was only about 14 at the time. So getting a letter back from somebody and having that recognition of being the first fan was nice.
You mentioned about the clay sculpture that Rio did of Ace. You've got a picture of that, so that needs to go up.
That was a gladiator mystery for me because he would always be in the magazines holding his clay sculpture, and it was never really clear where it came from or who did it or why it had stag horns and why it said Be Demented on it. So it was nice to get the full background story behind that. Although I do think it was Rio who made it. I'll have to double check with her.
And of course, Warren gave us plenty of GladPod exclusives. The thing that really stood out for me was Hit and Run and how that all went down. I mean, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, no, that's a story because the one thing that always people kind of wonder about Gladiators was it real? Was it rigged? Was any of the games kind of like the Gladiators going easy on them? And it was never that. But obviously, like I say, Ace has said that there was that occasion. It makes it slightly better for me that it was an event like Hit and Run, which, to be honest, it was an event for contenders to kind of get the points up. It wasn't a physical one-on-one kind of game. Yeah, the fan in me is kind of like, oh, it's not too bad. But to know that the producers were so angry, I think shows where their thinking was with the show and that it had to be real. And the fights that we saw and the battles were all kind of 100% legit, but I can understand where he was coming from as well.
And he wasn't a fan of the name Ace, actually would have preferred something like Rogue.
Yeah, I always thought Ace was a pretty good name, to be honest. It's slightly different, but it is pretty good to mean that you're good at what you do. Yeah, Rogue was an interesting choice. I don't think they could have gone for that because we obviously had a Vogue, so having a Vogue and a Rogue, I'm not sure that would have worked.
Paul, thank you very much. Tremendous episode. As always, guys, if you've got any stories, any messages, any questions for Paul, myself, or Di, you know how to get in touch. You can slide into our DMs on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, or you can send us an email, gladpod@gladiatorstv.com. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon.
Good competition, good spirit, great sportsmanship as both contenders show mutual respect. Join us again next week for the ultimate challenge, the might of